equity markets, and the American equity markets can't hugely outperform the growth of the wealth of the world forever. We ought to have reduced expectations regarding the future generally.
Yeah, dramatically reduced, because we mentioned earlier 53% of the world's stock market value is in the U.S. Well, if U.S. GDP grows at 4%, 5% a year with 1 or 2% inflation, which would be a very good result, I think it's very unlikely that corporate profits are going to grow at a greater rate than that. Corporate profits as a percent of GDP are on the high side already, and you can't constantly have corporate profits grow at a faster rate than GDP. And obviously, in the end, they'd be greater than GDP. And it's like somebody said that New York has more lawyers than people. I mean, there's certain, you run into certain conflicts in the terminology as you go along if you say profits can get bigger than GDP. So if you really have a situation where the best you can hope for in corporate profit growth over the years is 4 or 5%, how can it be reasonable to think that equities, which are a capitalization of that corporate profits, can grow at 15% a year? I mean, it is nonsense, frankly. And people are not going to average 15% or anything like it in equities. And I would almost defy them to show me mathematically how it can be done in aggregate. I looked the other day at the Fortune 500. They earned $334 billion on and had a market cap of $9.9 trillion at the end of the year, which would probably be at least $10.5 trillion now. Well, the only money investors are going to make in the long run are what the businesses make. I mean, there is nothing added. The government doesn't throw in anything. Nobody's adding to the pot. People are taking out from the pot in terms of frictional costs, investment management fees, brokerage commissions, and all of that. But the $334 million is all the investment earns. I mean, if you own a farm, what the farm produces is all you're going to get from the farm. If it produces, $50 an acre of net profit, you get $50 an acre of net profit, and there's nothing about it that transforms that in some miraculous form. If you own all of the Fortune 500 now, if you owned 100% of us, you would be making $334 billion. And if you pay $10.5 trillion for that, that is not a great return on an investment. And then you say to yourself, can that double in 5 years? It can't. The $334 billion, it can't double in 5 years with GDP growing at 4% a year or some number like that. It would just produce things that are so out of whack in terms of experience in the American economy. It won't happen. So anytime you get involved in these things where if you trace out the mathematics of it, you bump into absurdities, then you better change expectations somewhat. Charlie?
Well, there are two great sayings. One is, if a thing can't go on forever, it will eventually stop. And the other I borrow from my friend Fred Stanback, who I think is here. People who expect perpetual growth in real wealth in a finite earth are either madmen or economists.
Zone 4, please.